Lawrence is fucking dying over there.
Do you need to cough?
You yelling at anybody?
Let it out, dude. Yeah, go ahead. All right.
Let that Holy Ghost language come up out of me.
Spirit release.
How does the money work? Or like how? Like I know this is a business. Like, do you know it's a business? Like, are you making money?
Well,
off it? Like just being curious, not even saying like this is bullshit. Like really being like, yo, do you get rich from this? Or like, do you not? Like, where's the line? Like,
Well, you hit the nail on the head. So I've interviewed hundreds of pastors. We've interviewed thousands of people just on the streets. I've only ever had one call it a business.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. When you don't call it a business, you get away with murder. But like murder. Like there's murder stories we have. Yeah. And it's like, that's why we have to call the institution a business. And that guy, that head lawyer that oversaw the nonprofit sector, even he had trouble saying that. So in the interview, I'm like, what's a business? And he's like, well, if an institution has capital coming in and capital going out, that's a business. And I'm like, okay, is a church a business? And he goes, well, and I go, it has money coming in, exactly, and money going out. And he goes, and he laughs, and it's in the show, and he goes, okay, you're right, it's a business.
Yeah.
And I'm like, see, right there, that is the missing mark.
Yeah.
Is once you call a church a business, and this is what's crazy, LifePoint, their budget was probably 40 to 100 mil a year. I don't know.
Probably. Yeah.
I know lots of churches who have operating budgets around that, and so it's like, let's put 100 mil just for simple math. So you got an operating budget of 100 mil a year. Call it a business, and then guess what? All of a sudden, you'll want to run it with accountability, with transparency, and then businesses. What do you guys do here? You have to milk a dollar to make a profit. So that church will now realize, hey, we should milk our dollars because dollars are valuable. Mm-hmm. But if it's not a business, the money doesn't matter. Like I asked one pastor once, I said, hey, what, and this isn't the first time we shot the show 12 years ago. I was like, what do you think about like nonprofits not being taxed? And he, instead of having a conversation, he goes, you know what? Tax me, Nathan. And I'm like, that's not what I said.
I can afford it.
Well, that's literally what he goes. He goes, I'll just go find more money. And I'm like, that's the problem, is you don't value your money source. You don't value the people in your pews because I'll manipulate them even more and milk them even more. Yeah. So tax me. It's like, dude, that's not what I'm saying. Like, why don't we have a conversation that says, hey, you're a business, let's run it like a business. And actually bring smart businessmen and women in to run it like a business.
Yeah. So, all right. So you started 12 years ago.
Yeah. And
it's just been going on the whole time, or it took a pause?
No, we took a pause. Like we shot the show. I was a train wreck in my 20s. Sure. You know, I had a lot of fun, like traveled the world, got into a lot of trouble. And that was me kind of lashing out, I think, of part of the way I was raised, like all of us do. And so I started the show, shot it all. We were in edit, and I was young. I didn't have a good head on my shoulders yet for material like this. And so in edit, it just felt kind of ranty. Gotcha. You know, I felt like I was on the top of a mountain just screaming at everything.
Yeah.
And so I kind of was like, oh, I'll put it to the side for a month. And then flash forward a couple of years, and I got a girl pregnant, and I became a dad, and I never wanted kids. And then as soon as I saw this baby, I was like, I just fell madly in love with it.
Yeah.
And it shifted my whole ethos to how I approached everything, friends, family, life. And it shifted my perspective on how I looked at my past in church. And so instead of coming at it from, like I did when I was 28, from a lens of frustration, I came at it from a lens of love. Like I loved those people, those pastors that were misusing the Bible, like for their own gain. I loved those congregants. I loved my mom and how she sat in those pews and gave diligently and lovingly. Like I loved it all, but it was broken. And so it's because my daughter, I would say that my lens changed and I took a more, I would say, Christ-like approach to it. And I'm like, I love this. But
so it kind of like got revamped or reworked?
Yeah. So she was born almost 7 years ago. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to just start reading. And so I did 3 passes on the Bible.
Yeah.
And then I realized, hey, there's a lot of books that Bible I hold that used to be in that Bible that aren't in it anymore. So I started reading what's called the Apocrypha. And then there's a ton of surrounding literature that the early apostolic fathers wrote. And I'm like, I'm going to read all of that. and I wanted to go back to the source. So anything that was close to Christ or written around that time, I wanted to read.
So you went right back to the beginning research.
It was the first time as a Christian, it was 34 years till I finally read the actual book, you know? Yeah. And I'm like, wow, this book is different than what they say on stage, you know?
So now you're doing research and you kind of decided like, I'm going to maybe finish this project that I started a while ago. When did that start? Was it a couple years ago?
So 3 years ago is when I like decided to pick it back up again. Okay. Mid-COVID, I'd moved to Utah.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, you know, what am I going to work on next? Like all my shows had wound down, my other like trash TV shows. I didn't have much commercial work going on. So I was like, oh, you know, I feel like I'm mentally at a space where I can tackle this again. You know, having toddlers.
So you're working on other projects as you're continuing. So you're getting like more experience.
Yeah, I made most of my money in commercials. So I would do like commercials for Absolute Vodka, for Hyatt hotels. Like that's where I made all my money.
Nice.
And so I was at a point where I'm like, okay, like I'm ready to, and at the same time I would do like mainly action sports movies. So I worked for Oakley and Burton and Billabong, and I just traveled the world making.
Oh, that's sick.
How did you fall into like reality TV?
Ironically, I moved to Maui, and I was shooting a commercial for a dental company.
Okay.
and I needed a studio space, and I had just moved to Maui, and I'm like, this is like a rock in the middle of the ocean. There's no real like talent here. So I texted the only studio on Maui, and turns out his name's Paul Eman. Shout out Paul. Like, he does everything for the islands. So like he has a massive studio. He works on everything from Temptation Island to the PGA golf tournaments to he is the man in Hawaii. And he lived like a mile from me. Okay. And so I rented his studio space and we immediately became friends. And so any commercial I brought there, I'd use him. And I went from like a small fish in a big pond like Hollywood to a decent sized fish in a small pond. And so we worked on a ton of fun stuff together. And so that's where I got into like TV, like real, like Temptation Island and reality.
Yeah.
Because Oprah lives on Maui. There's just a ton of people that live on Maui.
Right.
And so a lot of stuff is shot on Maui.
So you said you had a head injury, which kind of took you out. So you became kind of like the guy who filmed.
I was a BMX, like freestyle BMX kid. I surfed, I skated, I snowboarded, and I had a massive head injury.
Doing which one?
What's up? Ironically, on a motorcycle, on a quad. I was in the dunes in Cabo and just was stupid and wanted to hit this little windswept lip, and there was no back, so I just fell 40 feet.
Oh shit!
And I had a grand mal seizure. Like they're like the doctors were like, he's 50-50 coming back, and they life flighted me from Cabo San Lucas. This is Cabo in like '99, so it's tiny, you know. So they kept the airport open. My grandpa paid for a private plane to come down with a nurse and pick me up and get me back to Scripps, and they got me to the hospital, and they're like, he's young, like he's got tons of blood on his brain, so we're just gonna like watch him. And 2 weeks later, I just was wheeled out in a wheelchair, and the doctor's like, you're a miracle, like don't fuck up.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, but I couldn't. So they're like, so I got those brain scans for 2 years after that. I lost my driver's license, and so they're like, don't do anything, because if you hit your head again, you're probably going to have serious permanent damage. And so I picked up a camera and started filming my buddies. And
Still pretty dangerous. I've busted my ass filming people, especially skating.
Well, as I got older, as the years went, I didn't know what I was really doing, you know, so I'd post up on a tripod on the beach. But then I started, like, I'm a pretty nutty camera operator now.
Or showing up at someone's church with a couple signs.
But and then this is, does it have a name, your current project?
The religion business.
Okay, religion business. Yeah. And then this is fully yours, though, right?
Yeah, so my production company's producing it. Chris is an executive producer of it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so the distribution rights.
But it's not like you're doing it for someone else.
No, this is strictly the story that, like, that's why Chris is such an amazing business partner. Like, I have this story, I need to tell it, and Chris is like, do your thing.
And when will it be done or available?
It's gonna launch Easter Day of 2025.
Oh, what a fucking day to do it, dude.
Yeah.
Hey, all you fucking pastors preaching today, I'm about to ruin your world.
And then Christmas Day, we're going to drop the actual trailer for it.
Yeah.
Nice. Oh, that's
and then
so
Thanksgiving,
so it's
we'll
done.
do the
It's just
teaser
about to be
for the
released.
trailer.
Yeah, we're basically, the show's huge. Like, it's 7 episodes. We've got about 7.5 hours of material cut.
Wow.
It is big.
crazy.
It's shot on 5 different continents. It's big.
What's it going to be released on?
I produce for Amazon. I'm an outside producer for Amazon, so it'll be on Amazon Prime. But our goal is to like shock the system.
Unconventional.
Yeah.
Like, we want to get it on as many platforms as
Let's
possible.
blow it the fuck up.
Yeah, because we
that's
basically
cool.
think that if we can get 200 million people to see it in the first 90 days, it'll start a global conversation that will demand reform.
Yeah.
And so we're here to shake the tree hard.
And be a critical component and be a part of the reform side. That's why we created Broken Shepherds, which is our software app.
And here's why. Here's why. Because I want to give some encouragement for people if you were raised in the Christian church or you're Christian. Like, you guys give so much money that just a sliver of what you give could solve most of the global social issues if the money was stewarded and used properly.
Because we're talking about how many billion a year?
800, yeah.
890 billion.
So you talk about sliver, meaning like a couple billion.
No, if a 2022 report by
give me some.
Yeah, by a group. So there's a think tank or a group of hermeneutics professors, like statisticians.
Yeah.
They're Christians. They poll Christian churches around the world. So this is all voluntary data given to them.
Right.
53 billion, that's with a B, is stolen internally at churches every year. That's just by church staff. Because you think about it, a plate gets passed around, there's cash in it. So it's counted in the back room.
Yeah.
And that, from the time it's counted to the time it's deposited, there's a missing delta. That's 53 billion. So if we just stopped the theft, you could solve the top 30 global social issues. Keep the rest. If you want that megachurch, go for it.
Yeah,
if
just
you
stop
want that
the handful here, handful there.
So it's like just stopping the theft, you could solve the top 30 global social issues. So it's like, that's a problem, guys.
Yeah,
that's fucking
And the sad part is, that's a 2022 report. They're launching new data. They expect that number to be closer to 86 billion. And because technology is ramping up and there's more people realizing that the system is primed for abuse, so more people are putting their hand in that pie. And so that's the problem, is accountability has to come into this, or the system's going to collapse and more people are going to lose faith and say, screw church, I'm over it.
Yeah.
And then we're going to, like, the Christian church is killing itself.
Yeah.
Basically.
Technology, like accountability has to be there.
And
Correct.
Like, looking straight at the camera, we're not here to attack anyone's faith. We encourage giving.
Yeah.
But we want people to know where their money is going, so they make an educated decision, because that's how impact happens. If the money's going to solve problems, the problems are going to get solved, and there's accountability there. If not, humans will human.
Are you guys, because I know you said like it'd be, sick, 200 million views, let's say, in the first 90 days. Are you guys worried about like censorship of any kind, or being
not once it
down?
launches, because we have multiple private investigators on our team. We have multiple researchers. This isn't like a real loose, we're not gunslingers running around just like throwing numbers out there. Yeah. It's extremely factual. So people aren't going to be ready for it. On the screen, as you're watching the show, if we reference data, there's going to be a link in the lower right corner, and you will find it on our website. You'll find the actual documentation. And so we're basically presenting a 7.5 hour legal argument for why reform needs to happen. And it's super entertaining though.
Yeah.
because we have open investigations. So we're taking down.
Is that like a magic number, the 200 million in 90 days?
No, it's just, we know we have executive producers that that have launched some shows not in non-traditional media that have gotten that 90 days, and they're giving us some guidance.
Sure.
So
like a goal.
Yeah. So one was the movie Sound of Freedom. It came out
I was literally just going to say, okay.
So we know the executives of that movie, and so they're helping us, and they've given us advice.
Didn't they deal with like being pushed back?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So they're kind of in our wheelhouse in regards to it's
cool.
Yeah, so they're helping us and giving us guidance.
Yeah.
But make no mistake, like, we've been, like, the censorship thing has played
Very
a huge
real,
component. I mean, we got
What have you guys dealt with?
Permanently banned for TikTok, and it all started. There was a few things. The first one was Nathan and I asked, who's worse at managing money, the U.S. government or the religious institutions?
Right.
And that got flagged for drugs and alcohol.
Makes sense.
Yeah, dude, you guys are fucking using and abusing.
Yeah, exactly.
And then unoriginal content. Then when as the election stuff's ramping up, the words hate speech, that term,
Yeah.
they hit us with hate speech.
Yeah.
And then
And they give you a permaban over that?
they permanently
like
banned us.
first violation?
No, they never even gave us a.
No, we didn't have any outside of the like, hey, this post was hit for drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
They would tell us that, but they never ever were like it came like a
Like
truck.
warning.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was driving. I remember my girlfriend and I were driving, and I just refreshed TikTok, and it was like permanently banned, and I was like, whoa.
Wow.
And I called him immediately. I'm like, dude, we just got permanently banned. And then what did we get permanently banned for?
Well, they wouldn't violating multiple community guidelines, and so we had to go back and go, what did we ever get hit with?
Yeah.
Drugs and alcohol. We never had a drug or an alcohol on anything. Unoriginal content. I mean, seriously. I
Yeah.
mean, this is what he's been doing for 20 years. Unoriginal. It doesn't get any more original than that.
Yeah.
And then the hate speech, because anyone can say something's hate speech, because like this guy's net worth $750 million.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't come up with that number. Like, that's not hate speech. And then when we got shut down and we were like, what's going on here? We started talking to some folks that were connected over there, and then they came back 4 months after we got permanently banned because we asked for another shot. They hit us with child endangerment. Like,
Makes sense.
Which is
Like,
the
what,
one,
what haven't we hit him for? Yeah.
which is the one thing that will get you permanently banned. They wouldn't even let us. So usually you can download your content.
Yeah.
They wouldn't even let us download our content.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Which is so weird because, like, I've gone, and I'll do this every now and then where I'll kind of go down the religion rabbit hole. And, like, there is I don't know what you would call, like, excuse my ignorance, I don't know what you would call, like, a pastor or priest, like, in the Muslim religion.
Imam.
But there's a bunch of those, like, on TikTok, on Instagram Reels, obviously, like Hallow is like a Christian app that's like meditation and prayer, and they run ads on Instagram and TikTok. And I mean, it's really just obviously like you guys calling out some shit that's going on, and they're like, silence.
Well,
shut
you
up.
got to think about that. Like you brought up a great point. Think of the ad revenue that Hallow and these pastors pay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, if I want to basically be a self-help guru and I'm like, hey, Jesus loves you, I can put, if I've got a big church, I'll put $5,000 behind that video to drive to my channel and pump the church, right? So that is literally ad spend. So there's tens of millions pouring into these companies from religious institutions and ad spend. They don't want guys like us pushing back on that ad
these
spend.
pastors are getting donations on TikTok.
Yeah.
They sit there and preach, and people send them
Well,
some money.
yeah, there's people that'll go like on live,
And
and
they're
they're
making
just
tons of
and they're
money off of
preaching.
that.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it's fucking crazy.
Yeah. So that's the problem is we realized most likely TikTok just doesn't want to disrupt their ad revenue, and we are here to disrupt that revenue chain.
Have you experienced anything on other platforms? Instagram, Facebook, YouTube?
Facebook, I'm permanently banned on.
Okay.
Like your personal is personal.
My
then?
personal, yeah. They it's weird. Like even if I get on any of my devices, and I change phones every year, change computers basically because we go through so much tech, like so many computers, but they'll know it's me even if I just try to open a new Facebook account.
Yeah.
They won't let you.
They won't let me. Nope. So and I have VPNs on everything, and somehow they know it's me. Maybe I should put a beard on or something.
Yeah.
It's crazy though. So yeah, I'm permanently banned on Facebook.
But we had a hard time getting going on X, I guess, with their transition. But like we would try to connect with someone out there, reach someone out there, because we paid to get the check mark and become a premium member and everything. And no response. Paid for it twice, and then finally we got it recently. So I think this is a perfect for X.
Yeah.
It's perfect for X.
There's porn on it.
Yeah.
It is crazy.
Elon, check us out, the religion business.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a tremendous platform for
Are there any socials that you guys have experienced to where they really just let you do your thing? They don't really bug you at all?
I would shout out to Instagram's been pretty
good to us.
like they have left us alone for the most part, and we know people. Like when I got arrested, that church came after us. That's a big church.
Yeah.
And their people came after us in a big way. So we know they were sitting there flagging it constantly.
Yeah.
And it still didn't get pulled. So that's awesome.
cool.
It's like, no, dude, we're here. We're literally here asking questions. Like all we're asking for is disclosure.
Yeah.
And so Instagram's been good. I want to tip my hat to
Yeah.
Instagram. Yeah.
But it's, I mean, because like that's something like we've dealt with, and like obviously now, like if you want to get something out there, like social media is the way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
We haven't figured the YouTube side of things out yet,
Yeah.
but that's something that we're going to put some energy into as well too.
It seems like now, especially if you're like building businesses on these platforms, like you just have to get friends with people that work there.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a business model.
Yeah, there's yeah. We know a little bit about the TikTok side of things.
Yeah.
We tried to spend some money to get it back, and that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's back doors to all these guys. You know, it's like, you pay me some money, I'll see what's up.
Because it's a business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's even like a dark side to that, you know. But
Yeah.
On your podcast, you had mentioned this effect you guys call the warm glow effect. I think that's going to be a huge impact, at least with all this going down, because we're all guilty of it.
yeah, so there's a dev economist from the University of Berkeley who's in the show, Bruce Wideck, super smart guy, like genius in regards to what the economics of things. But the warm glow effect basically means like if you eat a sugary treat, like there's a dopamine kick. If you jump on Instagram and you see how many likes you have, that's a dopamine kick. You giving is a dopamine kick, and you don't want to admit it, but that's a transaction. And so the development economists call it the warm glow effect. It means when I help someone, and the Bible talks about this too, right? The more you give, the more you receive. It's like, then when I give, I get this dopamine kickback, and it brings me satisfaction for a moment. And so materialistic giving, like the way a church asks you for money, is actually giving you that dopamine kick. And so when you do something for the warm glow effect, you don't care where the money goes. And so a really sad stat is only 3% of people that donate money ever even ask where the money goes.
Wow.
And so it's because you're actually giving for the dopamine kick.
Right. Not.
And so
You're just
To follow the
mindlessly
money.
like throwing.
correct.
Drop
So
that 20 instead of that 1, you're like,
exactly, you're looking.
I'm a good guy, man.
is that it?
Y'all see how rich I am?
Exactly. And so the big part is like when you look at how Christ or this guy Jesus, if you look at his teachings and how he asks to give he asks you to give generously and give what you can, it's because he always identified with the person. And so like let's take a homeless person for example, or a lot of people like to use the term unhoused. It's like if I just give to a charity that's going to quote unquote help the homeless, I don't really care where it goes. But if I have to go and sit down with them, and he or she might be drunk or might be mentally unstable, all of a sudden I'm trying to identify with this person.
Yeah.
And as soon as you identify with them, you bring their humanity back, and that is real giving. But if there's still a warm glow effect, but that's where the identification happens. But if I'm strictly there for the transaction to drop that money in for that dopamine kick, it's just a warm glow effect, and I could give two shits where the money goes. And that's what's missing in American giving or in Western giving today, is we don't identify with the cause we're giving to anymore.
Which is crazy because like I'm in recovery, and when we like at meetings, like there's like donations, like a donation basket.
Yeah.
But in every reading, it explains exactly what it's used for.
Yeah.
And then anybody can get involved to what would be called like an area level. And that's where on that level it's discussed all the money and all the meetings in that area, what it's being used for, what they're doing. And then you can get involved in another level, which is at the end would be global, where they're really talking about all the money and you can see exactly where it's being dispersed.
And like when there's excess, most of the time it's just donated.
Yeah, right? So you would do like if you had a meeting, I'm buying literature, this amount of money's going to literature, this amount of money's going to chips or key tags. The rest is being just donated to area to have a bank account where they have funds for events or whatever. But there's a treasurer there that's like, this is what we have in our bank account. You can all see this. If you want to see the bank account, email me. Here's the number that's in it. It's very transparent. It's not hidden. So
well, see, but that probably makes you want to give more too.
Sure.
So that's the thing. You see these pastors, they're like, we're not giving enough. You're not giving enough. And it's like, well, maybe you should be transparent.
But it is funny because I think they knew what they were getting into. They're like, we're going to give a bunch of drug addicts money. let's make some rules. But then on the other end of it, you see what people have done with rehabs.
Yeah.
And it's just as big of a business as the mega churches.
Yeah.
And it's like any of these. And I'm sure there's warm glow, effect happening in that. Like, I'm helping another addict. I'm doing this. And they're just bashing the insurance companies and whatever in all forms. Yeah. But like taking advantage, because you said like a lot of people are coming into the church when they're most desperate. Imagine dealing with a parent that their kid's about to die because of drug addiction. I'll do anything to save. It's the same thing. Yeah. And we see it with medicine too, cancer, whatever.
Oh yeah. No, we kind of say this is just the first of a handful of shows we're going to produce.
Cool.
That take on different legacy, we call them legacy institutions. Right. Because systems need to reform, right? It's like constant reform happens. We don't think it does because we see our little window of reality. We say, oh man, this week took so long, or this month is dragging. But it's like, no, over 100-year, 200-year, 300-year span, we are a blip in the radar. Yeah. But reform happens. And so there's a lot of legacy institutions right now that are just primed for reform.
I could see like a segment where you have Alex going to churches as an undercover angel.
I will do that.
You expose.
Yeah, exactly.
I would watch Undercover Angel.
Dude, we always had this
with
idea.
the backwards robe on.
We always had this idea where I fucking
today I'm a girl.
We always had the idea where I put on like hidden glasses, like camera glasses, and like go on dates or like go to other shops and like try to just fuck around.
Yeah.
Bro, if I was a fucking flying angel at a mega church, dude.
Like you specialize in that.
Yeah.
Like they could subcontract
we got a tight window coming. We could probably get.
Listen, dude, you guys. Listen, if you need some shit, you get me.
But what I don't get is like, even for me who is not as familiar with you as some other people. Like I feel like I know what your content's about. I know kind of your mission. Yeah. Why would some of these people agree to meet and talk with you?
Well,
if they're doing something wrong, does that make sense?
Well, that's the problem. I sent an email to probably 800 pastors, just introducing the show, who I was a couple years ago. Yeah. 2 responded of the 800.
Okay. Yeah.
And then, like I said, it's a series of breadcrumbs. Like, it's taken us a long time to open doors because people didn't want the doors open. Yeah. Churches under 500 people, most of them were pretty responsive. And it's because their budgets are tight. They don't make that much money. And they know that there's problems in the system. So they're like, hey, we're good with it. Churches over 500, no one wants to talk.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you start getting budgets of 2, 3, 4, 5 mil a year, you're like, oh, there's money here. Even if you just peel off 2%, like that's real money, Yeah. And so this trip, what brought me to Florida outside of this podcast was, for the first time, I had a megachurch pastor say, like, I'm down to talk.
Did I see an Instagram post about you kind of saying that was about to happen?
Yeah. So he ran a church of 20,000 people, one of the top 10 churches in America. Yeah. And he's like, I see it, I get it. I'm a byproduct of it. He's like, he says a brilliant,
like almost like a whistleblower kind of?
Yeah. Okay. He basically says, look I would use the term, I was there to save souls, but I was really there to build my brand.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he's like, now
to say something like that.
He's like, now I see it.
Yeah. I can't imagine.
So this pastor is like acknowledging the wrong, and he's like, I'm trying to change.
Yeah. I've never heard it. Like he is, like even the tithing conversation we had earlier, like I had over dinner with him and did not hold back. Cause I'm like, I know you preach this 10% crap. And he's been texting me nonstop for the last 2 days. He's like, you just sent me down the craziest rabbit hole. And he's like, I've learned so much, and I was selling the wrong thing. Yeah. And it's just.
Did he know he was doing something wrong?
No, he would firmly, he says it in the interview. He's like, I firmly believe I was saving souls, when in reality, like I was just using that as an excuse.
Like he felt like he was backed by the Bible.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Because we call it like just a generational, it's passing knowledge down from one generation to the next. And so most people don't do their own research. So he's like, I just learned all this from the older dudes that taught me. And I was like, oh, this is what it is.
Which is crazy because like the church I was at, it's usually to whistleblow, I would assume it's usually I'm also turning my back on my family.
Yes.
Because like the mega pastor in Atlanta was Charles Stanley, and then it was Andy his son. It was Andy Stanley. So I feel like that industry is majority nepotism, and it's just like chip passed down generationally. Yeah. And then it's, you know, to do that, it's like, yeah, my dad was fucked up, my grandfather.
Oh, it's sad, dude. Yeah. It's when you look at that's a dangerous path to go down but yeah, the nepotism thing, which is, you know, just passing down generational knowledge and hiring your kids and giving businesses off. Like, that's the thing. Like, you're passing a church, which is a business, off to your children.
Which is insane.
And then this is what's even crazier. You say, oh, my son was called or anointed by God. Yeah. You're like, no, you just freaking hired him, dude. What do you mean he was anointed?
I think it's so highly of myself. Like, in a for-profit business, you could sell your company, right?
Yeah.
Like, a nonprofit, it's they don't own it.
Yeah.
But they can pass the generational wealth down, the homes that come with it, the jets that come with it. Mm-hmm. Wow. I mean, we have churches. I mean, we have private jets out there that are registered as a place of worship.
Yeah. Wow. Do you think churches should be able to make any money off the business itself?
Sure.
Okay.
Like, so Sister Rosemary, that little Ugandan woman who's Mother Teresa of Africa, she's
a millionaire.
No. She's taken a vow of poverty and charity. Well, she calls it a vow of charity, but it's a vow of poverty. But it goes back to that Brazilian seminary I told you about that makes bricks. They never took $1 in of donation. They wanted to create a self-sustaining model so they didn't have to ask people for money.
Yeah.
And I think that's where this idea of church could become really cool. If you call it a business, you can create, you know, profitable ventures. Yeah. It's like sell a clothing line that says, I love Jesus or whatever. And don't ask your people for money, so then they can invest that money into charity outside the walls that helps people.
So like maybe if they were like, hey, we have a church, we're going to turn it into a business so that we can do more things, if you guys are okay with that.
Well, here's like I think you got to call a spade, right? It's like most of these churches have clothing lines. They put, like, the big ones put on massive concerts, and they charge people to go to their concerts. There's a church in Texas that I went to that had Santa Claus on a huge sleigh with reindeer fly over our head.
That's
like
sick.
It was like Cirque du Soleil.
I'm paying to go to that.
It was like Cirque du Soleil. Like, I've been to Cirque du Soleil. It was the caliber of Cirque du Soleil. They had an angel with like a 20-foot shawl, like flying over, singing. It was beautiful. But I'm like, my seat cost $99. Yeah. Like, and there's 20,000 seats, and you do
I bought them secondhand resale.
Yeah, and you do 4 shows a night.
Yeah.
Like, guys, you're making. The pastor gets up and proudly afterwards goes, "It took 1,200 volunteers to pull this off."
Right.
And I'm like, this is the best business model ever, because you don't even have to pay your staff. It's all people working for free. And so that's when it's like, it's time to call a spade. You're making money in this business. Call it what it is.
Right.
Yeah. And what
like, I like, what? Like, hey, this isn't a church. This is an entertainment.
It's whatever you want to call it.
It's entertainment with the theme of Christianity.
I think that when you're asking people for donations, if you are transparent with how that money's being used and spent, the individual that makes that decision, the consumer, whatever you want to call it, will ultimately make a decision going, you know what, I'm good with that. I'm good. I'm good with his rock star lifestyle. I mean, that's your money. Do whatever you want with it. But people will, when they see the light and the truth, they're going to go, that's not where I'm going to put my money.
Right, like not under deception.
I'm going to go put my money on the type of work that Sister Rosemary, is doing out there, because those people get taken advantage of quite a bit. They'll have out in Uganda, they'll partner up with a church, United States. Church will take the beautiful photographs of the children and everything and struggling and suffering. Right. We're raising money for this.
For $1
they're lucky
a day.
they're lucky if they see half of it. The money raised.
Yeah, and to me it's nuts, because you kind of look at it, at least I do, and again from a bird's eye view of ignorance, but you're like looking
from the smartest person,
most ignorant person here,
undercover angel.
It's like when I think of old timey pastors or priests or anybody speaking the word of God, it's like a very minimalist lifestyle. Mm-hmm. It's a very like almost like poverty, but I'm doing this for God, you know what I mean? Or I'm doing this, I'll be rewarded one day when I pass or when I enter the kingdom, whatever it is. So to me, it always seemed wrong to like if you're preaching the word of God to like get paid for it, because it's like, then why are you really doing it?
That's a very new thing. Like, you know, when you go all the way back to Jesus dies, you know, whether he's the son of God or just a dude that said really cool things, that's a separate story, right? So he dies, these 12 apostles start going their own ways, they start spreading it. Christ, like, there was very distinctive directions for them. They said only take one pair of sandals, like do not even carry a money belt to go out and preach the word of like preach
a money belt,
don't bring any money.
Oh, okay.
And the reason why they wanted them to do that is because you have to rely on the generosity of other people for your food, for your shelter, for all of that. And then there's a book called The Didache, which was written really early on. And the Didache was saying, hey, when this person would come into town and want to preach to you or tell you about Jesus, he can only stay with you for 3 days. So put him up in your house, feed him, because he needs food and shelter. But if he's asked to stay for longer than 3 days, he's a false teacher, get him out of your house. And so that's where it started.
Water now.
That's where it started, right? And so you go throughout the, like, you know, throughout the early, you move up to the Vatican and the Reformation of the 1500s. The Pope is rich now, but everybody else is still living like paupers and poor. And so then you come to America, the church has this really cool reset where things go really simple again. The concept of tithing and donations almost disappears entirely. And then the Civil War happens and everybody's broke and the pastors go, okay, we're broke. Like no one can pay for our little church buildings. Let's look, what does the Bible say? And that's when they go back to these laws, these Mosaic laws, and go, oh, 10%. So it wasn't until for like just a couple hundred years that people even started giving 10% to a church. And then the idea of a full-time pastor is only about 50 years old. Like you got, like we see that as reality. You see Life Point as reality. I see North Coast as reality because that's what I was raised in.
Yeah.
But go back 50 years, mega churches did not exist.
Yeah.
Like a pastor only preached to the people right in front of him because there was no technology. So this idea that you and I see as a pastor, this you know anomaly that we see as a pastor and that we call a pastor is so new. But since we look through our own little like blinders, like that's what we think is a pastor. And so that's why we have to check ourselves. And the sadder part is full-time like pastors are mostly just white upper class men.
Yeah.
Like minorities, it's very, very rare to find like a Creflo Dollar or a TD Jakes. Like most minority pastors, like we explore this in Florida, in Northern Florida, are what we call bivocational because their poor community can't afford them a full salary. So they'll give them like some money, but they're usually outside working another job. And so it keeps them with the people, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I have to take a lunch break with you guys. Oh man, I have to walk to the bus stop, or oh man, my 99 Honda Civic broke down.
Yeah.
That's not a Land Rover with bulletproof glass.
Yeah.
Out of the 800, that's what Alex's Tinder looks like.
Just two.
Yeah, I have an
He keeps
email.
on
I
swiping on
have an
them.
email list of girls that I hit up every now and then.
Yeah.
You got a spreadsheet?
Have you guys offered like any anonymity? Like, hey, we'll come on, but we'll come on to the silhouette.
Yeah, we've done that a lot. Yeah, we have multiple people that do that. We're distorting their voices. Yeah.
Forensic file style.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or a lot of people like down to do that, a lot more at ease.
So I use the analogy of like there's a heavy line being drawn in the sand. And I don't want to use the word like battle lines, but it sort of is. Like we're starting to see people in the Christian community either agreeing and siding with us or totally staunchly ready to take us down, which is kind of exciting because I'm seeing people like the megachurch pastor and others starting to jump the fence. They're like, you know what? We agree. You're starting to get your message out. And yeah, I'd rather be on the light side than on the dark side. Yeah. And so it's fun. It's like we're starting to feel this shift in energy. And so more pastors are starting to hit us up on social media. More pastors are starting to reach out. And it's exciting.
There's some powerful ones, like won't name names, that will talk and say, I can see exactly where you're coming from on this. Yeah. And that's their way of saying, I agree with you, but like it's really hard for me to unwind myself out of this.
Yeah. Does the distorting voices or like having that anonymity, do you, as a filmmaker, as producers of this, do you fear maybe that can, to the viewer, that may shift like credibility in it at all?
Yeah, there's only one person in the show that I have like that.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, it's Like I'm not into that. Like I want.
That's a good point.
It's like let's put your name on this. Like
Yeah. You know, it's funny. You said if you figured out what a church is,
Definition, yeah.
because I'm also in recovery, so like a lot of this is similar, you know, and I think that makes sense because you know AA, NA, all that came from the Bible, right? Which maybe people argue, but that is like, you know, Bill W. took a lot of the inspiration from the Bible, right? But so the question will come up like, what's a meeting, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people agree that a meeting is just when two alcoholics or two addicts meet to talk, right? And maybe there could be a similar definition. What is a church, right?
Well, that is the biblical definition.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Where two or more are gathered in
Looks
my
like
name.
I'm the second smartest
Exactly.
person.
Yeah, we're fucking smart.
Hey man, 4.5 years off alcohol. So seriously, props to you guys.
Wait, how
Hey,
long
you
got?
fucking,
Yeah,
when's the last
take
time you
that
drank?
back. Get out of here.
It's been 5 minutes.
I went through my own recovery. I just made it across by myself.
No, we're just kidding.
You know, thanks God.
Go ahead.
No, just I was agreeing. The parallels are nuts in
It's
the church
community.
World.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
unity. Yeah, and like finding purpose and unity and whatever. But you were asking, what would you say? Like, how do you find out if a church is
Yes,
legit
like
or not?
what I was asking, like how do I find a credible place to go to, like a church or whatever? Like, how do I know what's good with all this newfound information of the corruption?
That's part of like the solving the problems that we're finding in this church, and that was one of the inspirations for the software app that we're creating.
What is a software app?
So it's we don't want to get like too much into it, but it's basically an accountability transparency platform, and the nonprofit's 100% in the driver's seat on the transparency aspect because they're the ones that are providing certain information and backup and such. And then also an ability to donate right then and there to the ones that they see. And Nathan did a really good job on the visionary side of this because it's a little bit of a dating app type of approach, right? Where you have interest and
I'm in.
but
So
you will get
it's
more
more
than
like
2 out of
dating app?
800.
It's a literal dating
Let's
app.
fucking go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so think of it as if you're a faith-based person and you're an atheist,
Yeah.
but you give, right? You give to nonprofits. You can look at the churches in your area or the religious institutions in your area, and what do you do on a dating app? You put your best foot forward. You put your best photos up.
Yeah.
You know, and so
Peacocking.
you're peacock or blue sky in yourself, you know? And so it's like, so the church will be, it's a race to transparency. So the more accountable you are and the more financial data you put up, the higher you rank.
Okay.
And so if I'm a church, you're a secular nonprofit, I will put as much data up. It's basically my marketing pitch, and then you guys are all geotagged. So if you ever want to look up churches in your area, the first one up is the highest rated.
It'd be
like
cool to do
marketing
like
transparency.
a Michelin star on churches.
Yeah,
It's
like,
pretty-
that's
well-
a 3-cross church.
So we have we've built an AI algorithm in the background that spits out that rating.
Yeah.
So we call it the light rating.
Yeah.
And so the brighter you are and the more light you shine, the higher you get rated. Same thing with a
cool.
secular nonprofit.
Yeah.
And so, for a secular nonprofit side of things, this is where it gets really crazy, is the hardest thing for a nonprofit is to raise money and find donors. Well, if you're more transparent, you're potentially going to have millions of potential donors put in front of you.
You'll be in more eyes.
So you're going to be in front of more people. And so we're working with a couple development economists, and they're like, you guys have created it's game theory.
Yeah.
It's like the movie Hunger Games. We've created the perfect trap.
Right.
Because if you don't play, you lose. And the more you play, the more beneficial it is
So you're
for
like
you.
restructuring the reward system.
Correct.
That's cool.
Okay.
and
so
encouraging giving.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Westboro Baptist Church gets 0 stars. Holy fuck, dude. They're far.
Crosses.
Negative crosses. Negative crosses.
But that's the thing, we don't care. So we wanted to create something that's almost humans hands off, that is an ecosystem that controls and runs itself.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, man, it's a cool it's installed on our phones. It's like ready to
When
go.
will that be launched?
The same time the film's released.
Yeah.
Nice.
Damn,
So
dude.
we're looking
Easter
at like
Day.
Christmas for a teaser and Easter for the final.
The resurrection.
I'm
happens.
really curious now.
And then the
I'm
app,
gonna
we're
watch
going
it
into
like
beta, like we're beta testing next month. So we have about 200 organizations that are coming on to beta
Nice.
test for us. But I mean, like
the app purchases, right?
No ads, dog.
no ads. Yeah. We do want gambling and porn stars to be able to.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a free app. It's like we want it to be the first. Well, it will be the first tool that really drives accountability into the system. And the goal is there's lots of smart people in the world, and we basically want to inspire people to be like, hey, we can make even better tools.
Yeah.
And so it's like, hey, tech doesn't just have to be this greedy, make as much money and put up as many hot photos of Alex as I can. It's like, no, let's create tools that actually better humanity as well.
Yeah. Which I like, because it's like, yeah, you are trying to like tear something down, but you're also bringing some solutions.
Yeah, exactly.
And because the government won't be able to bring reform to the religious sector in the U.S. because of separation of church and state. And so that's the problem, is it can't happen from a IRS perspective or a Congress perspective until it happens from a cultural perspective. And so,
yeah, I'm sorry, I can't stop laughing at Alex pranking a church like as a blind angel.
That'd be sick.
Could you imagine?
It would be fucking awesome, dude. I am so down to fucking
with
do
those
this.
huge Victoria's Secret wings.
Yes,
Yeah.
bro, and I'm just flying, dude.
It's funny because a while ago,
I get a boner.
Heading straight for the pastor.
and they're like, I knew we should have hired this guy. He's a real pro.
You ready to be a star?
That's 100% worth it.
For a little, like, because I kept going to church with my wife, and I was like trying to like, I said like be open and do it. And in the beginning, most of the time, like when I was in church, that's the time I would just write scripts for like the skits we do.
Yeah.
Because it was like quiet. I don't know. It was very nice.
No, it's called being inspired.
I'm talking to God.
Yeah.
It's called anointing, bro.
And then,
Welcome to the club.
and then she was like, you don't even pay attention when you go, And I was like, all right, yeah, right. So then I'm trying to like listen to the sermon, and she would ask me about it to see if I was like paying attention. And I would hear it and then give it back to her in like my version, So like, yeah, like they killed him. He came back as like a zombie and like whatever. and like, or what, to like see, but that was good enough for her, because she'd be like, oh, you're paying attention, and she could see that I was trying to understand it. But I was like, this is kind of funny. And then I would like tell my friends about it, like in like maybe a funny way or like provoking, like, yo, do you think there was like some argument with like God and Jesus, like, I'm gonna let you down there, but you got to behave. And then like he's chilling with all the hookers, and he's like, motherfucker, this dumb kid, whatever, And now all of a sudden it's like part of the conversation. I was like, bro, it'd be funny to like make a YouTube channel. We all go to church and then give it the sermon back in
your own
idiot
ways.
form. We never ended up doing
Zombie
it.
Jesus.
It'd be a funny.
Dude, I'm so like that shit is so funny to me, man. I think that'd be
Zombie Jesus?
Yeah, it's just the whole thing of like telling it's like drunk history.
Drunk history.
But biblical, and we're not drunk. We're just retarded. we have permanent wet brain. And
you have to wear that angel's outfit though as you.
He's like, sorry, I'm late. I had a.
Dude, put me in the trailer, dude. Every trailer has that one clip that's never in the movie.
What are some things that you've done besides the sign and like to get involved and get information? Like you said, you'd sign up first.
So my well, this is the gimmick, is like most churches you have to be a member, or they want you. Back in the day, they wanted you to become a member.
Yeah.
So this is where things get really messy. Is the denominational and non-denominational side of Christianity? It's kind of like the Wild West. Like make as much money as you can now.
Yeah.
But there's this thing called membership. So if you want to be a part of the church, you have to become a member, and then they want you to give. And so there's this legal kind of conundrum that churches find themselves in, where if I become a member, technically I have voting rights. Technically I can ask where the money goes. And so they've just never had someone, I guess, with a camera push back.
Yeah.
And so I I'm a member of Kenneth Copeland's church. I'm also a member of Ed Young Jr.'s church. But the non-denominational churches don't even take membership roles anymore. So technically the only form of membership is if you give and show up. And so I just either become a member if they have a portal to become a member, or I just show up and give. Well, at that moment, like in a for-profit publicly traded company, if I buy stocks, I'm a shareholder.
Yeah.
And technically I own part of that company. And so I have rights to know what's happening, where the money's going. Guess what? Those CEOs and board members, I know their salaries. I know the profit and loss margins. I know everything about that organization. A nonprofit, if I donate to your nonprofit, I can look up all that data on what's called a Form 990. If I give it to your church, though, I don't know where anything goes unless you tell me. So here's the kicker. I'm technically a stakeholder in both your organizations. I'm not a shareholder because I don't get any profits from it, but I'm a stakeholder in regards to I care about the mission and purpose of the organization. And so when I got arrested, I was sitting there and they're like, you're on private property. And I go, well, who owns the property? And they're like,
God.
they're like, oh shit. Because as soon as you start asking the questions, it's going to go down a rabbit hole where the whole system just implodes on itself.
I'm technically owner of this property.
Well, I'm like, I technically have rights to the property.
Yeah.
You know, and they're like, well, the pastor. I'm like, nope. They're like, the church. I'm like, nope. And
You
I'm
guys are gonna feel silly because I'm a member of this.
no, the best part is, I'm like, I'm a member. They go, no, you're not. I'll go, oof, actually, I am. You know. And then the funny part is, as I'm in handcuffs, I'm like, I donate here, so I just want to know. And they go, we don't care. And I'm like, ooh, so that's a problem. You don't care about where your donor money comes from. Exactly. I even had a lawyer call me, and they're like, you were smiling in that video. And I'm like, yeah, because it's so stupid.
Yeah.
Like, the argument is so easy to, like, when you really look at it.
So this is something that will just be dismissed?
I don't know.
I'm going away for 10 years, guys.
As a previous clerk,
We're going to court next week.
Yeah.
We've got great lawyers. But basically, Texas is a very conservative, very mega church, especially Dallas center.
Yeah.
I love Texas. Chris loves Texas. I just got my judge. He's very conservative and very Christian, and so it'll be interesting.
There's a lot of money that goes from
That touches everything.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So we'll see. It's. I don't have a record, so it's not going to be a big deal.
Yeah.
But if the church really wants to push back and make an example of me, we're ready, because it means we're going to ask for a discovery.
Of course.
And they don't want us to do that, because then we ask for financials,
Right.
and that's when they have to disclose.
That's so cool when like the project, because we've had a few like ideas with content or whatever where we've even talked about like, having security or, things could potentially
We've had
go wrong.
all kinds of issues.
And it's so cool to me when the project is so much bigger than like getting arrested.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And then on top of that being like, that's cool, I'm going to get arrested. This makes even better content.
Yeah.
And I have a whole team that will get me out. I have a team of lawyers. And if this goes completely south, this is essentially what I want. Like, it's gonna fuck everything up.
Well, so many people online are like, you guys just want the views. And I'm like, you have no idea what led up to that arrest.
Yeah.
Like calls to lawyers, calls to the church. Like that story is 2 years in the making.
Yeah.
And we've given them so many, biblical olive branches, so to speak. And we have legal documentation. So it's like, no, dude, that just proved our point. Yeah. The arrest was just proving the point.
Yeah. Have you because I feel like that would be like a great YouTube episode. We started with this, and you know how people kind of do like those background deep dives?
Yeah.
Yeah. And like they got to like follow it real quick in 10, 15 minutes.
We've partnered up with, Tommy G on YouTube. He's got a couple million subscribers. Yeah, Tommy G. So Tommy G came with me on the Copeland run. And so Tommy's launching a show simultaneously to our show launching. Cool. And so we're bringing some YouTubers in who are really good at that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Because I'm into, I just make long form TV and we make long form shows.
Yeah.
And so he makes more of that 30 minute content. So, that's a huge story to tell. So Tommy's on that one.
Well, if you guys are ever going to stir some shit up, here, we got you.
Yeah, for sure.
You being a filmmaker and being producers of this show, do you find like it launching on like streaming platforms way more useful than if this were to, for example, launch on like YouTube or something like that? Is it like, how does that work? Because I just have no idea, like the YouTube versus TV. It's actually something we were talking about earlier.
I mean, we're like telling you at the end of the day, we want to get a couple 100 million views on this. So we're having lots of discussions and doing a lot of research on what is that path. But it'll be an unconventional path.
That's cool.
Yeah, there's no like when I first started in the business, we were shooting on like 35 mil perf usually, and it's like there was only a couple distribution opportunities. Today, the sky's the limit. It's as creative as you can get and kind of your goal. So, yeah, we're just being as creative and thinking outside the box.
We've podcasted with some people. They act like they're real interested and stuff, but we have people who are like, I'm not posting a clip of us talking.
Really?
Wow.
Because they're so worried about upsetting their audience
With religion.
with this concept of the religion business. Like, we're like bashing their faith. Like, that's not at all what we're doing. Like,
Is it hard to make a church?
No, very easy.
Let's make a church right
No,
now.
I'll tell you how easy it is, right? You can start a church right now at this table. You can call it Supreme Church. And we worship the ink gods. And you could walk into a bank and say, I'm a church. It's called Supreme Church. And they would you can get an EIN number and open a bank account tomorrow. That's what's so crazy. Since the IRS can't define what a church is, anything could be a church.
We should start a church. Not like a bad church.
There's Church of Weed, there's Church of the Sun. You can make a church out of anything. Now, if you so you don't even need to file for tax exempt status. This is what's so crazy.
We're about to make so much money.
This is what people don't realize. Like, if you want to start a corporation, you have to go to file your corporate documents, do all that. If you want to start a secular nonprofit, it's like a 24-month period to get your tax exempt status.
Yeah.
If the IRS gives it to you. A church, you get it automatically out of thin air.
You just apply and you get it?
You don't even need to apply.
You just declare it.
You literally, do you watch The Office where
I declare bankruptcy?
Exactly. And they're like, you can't just say I declare bankruptcy. You can declare a church. You can literally say, I declare I'm a church and start it tomorrow.
What the fuck?
Do you think, if I declare right now that this back room is a tat church and we worship the tat
I'll tell you
gods,
right now, yes. I'll tell you right now. Because you want to know what?
Put on your girls.
Because you want to know what? All it takes, it's called the association test. Do you have a building to meet and
Do you
worship
have
in?
to own it though? Because
No.
we rent it.
No, that's fine.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so do you have
this is God's building.
Okay. Do you have a place of worship? Yes.
Yeah.
Do you have a formal creed that you worship under? Yeah. I worship under the ink tattoo gods.
The tat gods.
Yeah.
That's
so
kind of
that's your
thing.
form of
Yeah.
worship. And then there's
you have
three.
a leader.
No. Then you have to meet.
I'm the leader.
Then you have to meet at least once a month to
We
worship.
meet every week.
every day.
So you already from the IRS associational standards are valid. You have what it takes to be a church.
Do you think it would be wrong for me to make a church here? I wouldn't take any money. Just as like a fun.
I believe. No, go for it.
You guys in?
I don't. No.
No.
You were there at the start, man.
Exactly. But I'll come every if I'm
10 years.
If I'm in Florida, I'll come and visit.
In
every
10
Sunday.
years, you're gonna be like, I was actually there when.
But
they
if you
started.
start worshiping him as a flying angel, dude, that might be it.
We're in, dude.
No, actually, their story becomes he resurrected.
I came out of the water a girl.
Why doesn't everyone just do this?
They're starting to do it. So this is
yeah.
what's crazy is, and so Chris was talking about this in 1913. Income tax laws were written by Congress, and Congress was like, hey, there's some good things, churches, and there's some good businesses that are really helping the community, the local community.
Yeah.
So they called it the nonprofit sector. So this is only 111 years old. And so when that happened, they were building what we call local social capital. They were there for their community. And there was 12,000 organizations in the U.S., 12,000 that got this status. Today, there's 1.9 million.
Yeah.
And if you do now granted, the biggest pushback is, the population's grown. So if you stick that 12,000 to the curve of population growth, that means there'd be 43,000 nonprofit organizations. That includes churches in the U.S.
It's close.
There's 1.9 million.
It's a 44th.
So the Church of Weed is super new, right?
Yeah. Well, so that's just what's happening is people are realizing the Kardashians own a church. Like, what? Yeah, this tiny little room in what's just north of Ventura. There's it's
Calabasas?
tiny. Yeah, Calabasas area. Yeah, it's freaking P. Diddy's money manager. Her husband has a church. Like it's this. People are just realizing. It's exactly. It's a great place to get away with pretty much anything.
Yeah.
And so that's what a church is today. And that's what's so sad is there's 16,000 Starbucks in the U.S. There's 13,000 McDonald's. You see those freaking everywhere.
Yeah.
There's 400,000 churches.
That's insane.
Like, you got to say, come on, guys. Like, there's a lot of Starbucks.
And that number's like all encompassing, right? Of like just any church.
Correct. Any denomination, any religion.
Because you'll drive down like right over here. If you drive down Sunrise, there's like a church for Haitians. It's like a Haitian something church, and then there's like the Church of Nazareth, and then there's like 3 different churches on that one strip, and they're tiny.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest issue that happened was we started calling a place of worship a church. And so, right, a church is this. We are the church just sitting around, where 2 or more are gathered in my name, I will be there also. That is the definition of a church. And the term is ecclesia, and that's what translated into the word church. And so if it's just the people, you can meet anywhere. So what is the building? What is the landscaping? What is the stage? What are the seats? That's what we ask in the show. What is that? Because that is not a biblical church. And so that's why there's so many of them now, because we turned a gathering place into, I'm going to church. No, you are the church.
Yeah.
And so you're going where? You're going to a business where the church meets.
And like once that's defined, will that be like the business entity?
That's what our hope is, to say, let's call a spade a spade. That entity is the church, is the business, and the church just kind of gathers there. That's where
the church is the people.
The church is the people. Yeah. Everything else is a business entity. And guess what? If I don't agree with Dunkin' Donuts sugary coffees, then I'll go to and I want to help a more mom and pop coffee shop, I'll go there, right? But it's a business. So, hey, I don't agree with the big stages. I don't agree with the pastor making $5 million a year and flying private. So I'm going to go over to this business. Yeah. And once you call it a business, you can kind of with a more educated lens, choose what fits your form of worship or form of gathering. Which
is cool, because it's not like, to your point as well when you were talking to the camera, like this has nothing to do with don't go to these churches. Mm-mm. It has everything to do with just make an informed decision, and where is, when you're participating, where's your money going? Where's all this stuff going? So that you're not like, oh, this mega church is like, here is Calvary Chapel. Mm-hmm. It down here would be like the mega church. Yeah. So you're like, oh, I'm not going there. That's just because that's the church here. No, you have a bunch of places to go. Be informed about where you're going.
Well, and I would end on this idea of good intentions pave the way to hell, right? Yeah. And the idea of a sermon is only about 150 years old too. That pastor getting up there and speaking, that's only about 150 years old.
That's crazy.
So when you think about what we see as a church, it's just a cultural creation built on Jesus' teachings, But so it's like when the pastor's up there and he kind of becomes a celebrity, he can say, hey, you guys sit there. I am the expert here. Let me educate you. Mm-hmm. Oh, you know what? Don't teach your kids. I'll hire people to teach your kids. Yeah. So we've kind of spread out responsibility, so to speak. And hey, you give the money to us, we will utilize it properly. And we've just created literal hell. We've built institutions that are the darkest, shadiest forms of business. And then when you question it, I say, you don't have faith. And so that's the biggest part, is it's like you're bringing people in at their most vulnerable, telling them to be faithful. And then you're like, trust me.
It's not put the faith in God. It's like, put faith in me.
Correct. I'll end with the story. We're in London, and I'm sitting at the airport with my camera operator. We had just left Oxford interviewing a theologian and a philosopher, and these 4 white-haired dudes, they're in their 80s, are sitting next to us drinking beer, and we just start talking because our plane's delayed, and we're drinking beer too, and it's one of their 82nd birthday, and they're going to Mykonos. So it's like a boys' trip in your 80s, and I'm like, that's pretty cool. So I order them all another beer, and we push our tables together, and we're talking, and they ask us about the show, and I tell them, and I'm like, what do you guys do? And they're all professors, and they're all atheists. And so I'm like, after about an hour, I'm like, okay, you know what the show's about. I'm like, what do you think of Jesus Christ?
Me?
No.
Oh, you said that?
The first
He's pretty cool, whatever.
Well, this atheist professor goes, he's the most inspirational person in history. I'm like, what do you think? And he goes, his life transformed Rome. I'm like, what do you think? They all had only positive things to say. And I'm like, what do you think about institutional religion? And they're like, destructive. What do you think? And you went around the circle, and all 4 atheists had no problem with Christ. They thought his teachings and his life literally brought humanity out of the barbarism that it was. Yeah. into like a respectful, like my life is equally as valuable as yours world, but they all couldn't stand what the institutions become.
You cannot like dispute like Jesus Christ was a historical figure. That has nothing to do with faith or religion. Like even I growing up like always thought like Muslims like they don't believe in Jesus, and it's the flip. They very much believe in that guy, and if you try to like disprove of him or discredit him, you're not part of our religion because he's part of it. Yeah. So it's like everybody's cool with cool with Jesus. Dude.
Yeah. No, it's wild, but it's the institution that we've built on top of him. Yeah. And then everybody goes, oh, "You're attacking Jesus's church." I'm like, no, actually, I'm not.
All that like corporate bullshit always made me not want to say I'm Christian. More I'm spiritual.
Well, that's why I say I'm a Christ follower, because I'm like, I like the teachings of Christ, because he didn't. In the Bible, there's not many words spoken by Jesus. So if you just read those, you're like, he's a pretty awesome dude who had no problem hanging out with the lowly, the prostitute, the widowed, the marginalized. He actually would rather be there, but he would have no problem going to the temple with a frickin' whip and just go to town on those fools who were trying to make money off of his father, you know?
Yeah. He didn't like those tax collectors.
No.
On that note, like after Nate got arrested and we had the post on social media, you have these people who are like, what did you think was going to happen? You clown showing up with posters in a parking lot. And I was like, you call that Christianity? It's like, okay, so Jesus, who we all agree with, is awesome, comes in to the temple courts, flipping tables, and calling people out on manipulating people to buy stuff. And at the end of it all, you know, he says, you're turning my father's house into a den of thieves. Right after that happened, they started plotting Jesus' death. But when people wear these little bracelets and they're all, well, what would Jesus do? Or all these religious leaders right now, how would Jesus vote? Jesus wouldn't have had a sign. He would have walked into the church and said something.
Which is at the end of the day, and it's cool too, because again, it's like what you guys are doing. It's problem but solution. It's not just like you guys. It's not you're in a, you know, just like a lot of people do. It's not like you're just like, oh, fuck the rich, like you guys suck. You were like, there's a huge problem here, and I'm trying to find the solution, but like I need to make sure that you know that there's a problem. Yeah.
Well, there's great wealthy people doing amazing things. It's like I'm a capitalist by nature. It's like I could care less. Yeah. But you just again got to call a spade a spade. Yeah. Like if you're making $5 million, just let your people know you're making $5 million. If you're making 100,000, let your people know. If you're not getting paid, well, maybe you should make a better pitch on why you should make a little money for your efforts. True. You know?
Yeah, I make like $5 million.
What are like some good questions maybe people could ask, you know, where they go to worship?
Yeah, the easiest one is like, hey, you know, how can I see the accounting in the church? Yeah. And that usually
like
they'll go, why are you even asking that? Or they might hand you a pie chart. If they hand you a pie chart, say, no, I want to see the financials. What
is this, Pac-Man?
Yeah. The ones that always rattle feathers are, I'd like to know your salary. Yeah. Because in most churches today, people don't know the salary. And you should. Like I was in a church up in Orlando where a husband and wife pastored together at a Methodist church, and they're bivocational. The husband has 3 jobs. And I'm like, dude, you make $30,000 a year and you have turned this community into like the most beautiful epicenter of your little town in Sanford. Like you deserve that and more. Right. Like I went to his church service and his wife preached, and I'm sitting in there and there's homeless people asleep on the benches inside the church. There's kids with Down syndrome. There's mostly older people who can't afford to even give. Like I watched them. Some were putting like a $1 bill in. Other were putting $5 in. And I'm like, Megan and David are literally preaching to the least of these, and that's what Christ told to preach to. And then you go to a mega church, and it's all upper middle class families. Everybody looks perfect. And I'm like, you guys have pushed, and this is what the mega church pastor said up north, is he goes, Nathan, I realized I had pushed the least of these, the people Christ cared about most, out of my church because they were blemishes on the church. And so it's like, what's your salary? And then what's your housing allowance? That's the big one, because the bigger the church, that's probably one of the most abused
The housing allowance.
The housing allowance.
They got like mansions and shit.
Well, it's because it's not technically income. They'll tell you it is, but it's taxed different. So you can offset your tax burden in a huge way. So there's pastors that pay themselves $100,000 in salary, but then $1 million in a housing allowance. And then they can stand in their pulpit and say, I make $100,000 a year in my salary. Oop, forgot to tell you about the housing allowance, but that's something.
My house is worth like $7 million. But
It's like God stuff. You wouldn't understand.
Yeah, you wouldn't understand. But so the salary, the housing allowance, and then what do we spend on missions and ministry?
Yeah.
And
on field trips and stuff.
Yeah, well. So this is the thing. Like ministry, there's no. You could call it a field trip, basically.
I don't know. That's what it.
So ministry.
I'm just double checking, bro.
Yeah. So ministry is technically.
Go to the aquarium.
The Jesus Aquarium.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Well, because
he's also an underwater angel.
Because when we're here and like when we're doing like shop stuff and we're like taking clients out to dinner, I just call it a field trip.
So it's a field trip.
Yeah.
But so since there's no legal definition, so you have to write off expenses, right? So you have to line itemize expenses because you're a for-profit business.
Yeah.
In the church world, you just call anything ministry. So it's like, oh, my private plane, ministry. Oh, that steak dinner, ministry. Whereas ministry is technically like when we go out and help people.
Yeah.
So it's like, I always say like, what do you call ministry, pastor?
These are good.
Yeah.
Good questions.
I'm gonna ask all these.
Yeah.
I thought you were gonna say like, oh, if there's a VIP lounge, you should probably.
Yeah.
Bottomless blood price.
No, it's
No, that's the sad part is there's churches that literally have mimosa bars in their green room.
That's kind
Right.
so fire. Oh my God.
So there's a denomination that has enough money in assets to buy every team in the NBA over twice and still have $20 billion left over.
Damn.
Yeah.
And everything, and they own an investment fund that is registered as.
A church.
Wow.
Can't wait for our shit to kick. Boy.
This has been so much fun because I had no idea what to like. I had gone through your social media.
Yeah.
We looked at some of the videos, and I don't know. Whenever I hear about people talking about exposing religion, my mind just automatically goes to like the weird trafficking stories and a lot. Like a lot of that stuff. And but this is just, I feel like a lot of people are really ignorant to is just the what happens with my money when I put it in the basket.
Yeah.
So bro, it's been such a pleasure. It's been really, really cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
To hear all this.
We need all the support we can get from the community. So please, like, get the word out. I mean, we're here to make a massive impact and actually start. And this isn't us. Like, we're broken ass men that are on this journey and stuff like that. This isn't about us.
Yeah.
No.
And then with the religion business, like where can people find this when it launches?
Well, it'll most likely be on Amazon. Like I produce for Amazon. That's the lowest hanging fruit.
Yeah.
But we're in multiple discussions with different platforms.
Okay.
And so it's kind of we're building the distribution puzzle right now.
Yeah. So they can follow on Instagram.
Yeah. If you follow the
updates
religion
on
business on Instagram, we post every day pretty much. And as we get closer to launch, that's where all the data is going to be.
Awesome. Perfect.
And then we're going to continue to do podcasts like this and.
Yeah, and again, we'll get a teaser on Christmas, and we'll get the release on
Teasers,
Easter.
Thanksgiving. Christmas is the trailer.
I get it.
Christmas is trailer.
You hanging from a biplane in your angel suit.
Yeah.
We'll just with a big banner. We'll just drift you around all of Florida.
Just be your production logo.
As long as Creed is playing at some point in time, bro. One last breath.
Man.
Just hold me now. I'm 6 feet. Yeah,
My purpose in life has been fulfilled.
Yeah, bro. Literally.
That moment.
Fuck, dude, at that point, fuck cooking, dude, fuck everything that I'm doing. God has taken me. I've been anointed.
I have a calling.
I've been angel.
I kind of just want us to rent that plane and get that suit just to get the shot.
Yeah, let's do it, dude. Fucking, you let me know the day I'm there.
Thank you guys so much
Thank
for
you,
coming
Angel.
on.
Dude, thank you guys so much.
John.
Pleasure. Thank you for watching the Unemployable podcast. Make sure to follow the religion business on Instagram and stay tuned for the release on Easter Day 2025.
Amen.
Peace.
Hallelujah.